like some housekeeping. I have some housekeeping that just kind of fills up space as people trickle in. So I'll just do that. You are in Markdown in minutes, and I think that they renamed it something like enjoying your editorial experience better with Markdown. And that's really what it's about. I was on a editorial team, and when we get a Google Doc, it was just super messy. And I'm like, I'm going to teach people how to write in Markdown. There is one image in my slide deck, and for people who can't access it visually, I will describe it. And I know that there are captions on Zoom, but I really like to show people this really neat trick with Google Slides that you can put captions on. So if you scroll down to that little bar down at the bottom, you do captions, and I do text size large, and then I put the captions up at the top, and I toggle them on, and then what happens is Google Captions takes on. So say you're at an event and they don't have captions, or someone in the back maybe just needs a little bit more reinforcement, you can turn those on. And the reason I put them up at the top is because when they go back onto YouTube, the captions on YouTube are usually at the bottom and they'll cover up because these captions are now closed captions and burned into my presentation and you can't turn them on and off. But we have captions in Zoom, so I'm going to go ahead and toggle those off, but I really like to show that feature off. And I think I can hit full screen somewhere, but I don't remember where. Oh, here we go, enter full screen. Okay. So I am Amy June. A lot of you know me. I've been in the Bay Area for a while. I switched jobs since the last Stanford camp. I now work for the Linux Foundation. I am their certification community architect, and that's a mouthful. I help build and maintain the portfolio of exams for the Linux Foundation on emerging technologies, meaning technologies that are just getting started and to like get out of the incubation phase and to become a real big technology. One of the things that they do is they have to build a certification. And I help build and maintain accessible content for them. I'm a member of the CNCF Deaf and Hard of Hearing Working Group. I am a Drupal core mentor maintainer, and I lead several camps, accessibility talks, and several regional Drupal camps, and I serve on the Drupal board of directors. If you want to find me across the spaces, I'm on Mastodon and LinkedIn as Volkswagen Chick. This is Spot. He is a short-haired American tabby cat. He's slightly calico. His real name is Spotty McSpots-a-lot, but it's a lot of a mouthful, so we just call him Spot. And he likes to program on my computer. So if there's any typos, we'll just say, Spot, help me program that day. Before we move to the demo, because mostly this is a demo, I want to talk a little bit about our choices in hosting providers. I want people to remember to be sure that your hosting providers, that the platform's accessible use policy prohibits them from hosting organizations designated as hate groups. And that's all I have to say about that. So why Markdown? I like to say because Markdown's cool, but really, it comes from me being on an editorial team for opensource.com for a couple years. And now I work with content authors while helping to build the exams for the Linux Foundation. And people will give me Google Docs. And I don't know if you've ever tried to enter what you copy and paste from Google Docs into the Drupal editor, but you get a lot of filler, you get a lot of spans, just a bunch of crud that's all over the place. So we get Google Docs, and then we also get plain text files. Plain text files are fine, but they don't allow for formatting. And so when the authors, submit these plain text files, we don't always know where we want their headings. We don't know where they want to list. We don't know if there's bold or italics in there. We don't know where there's headings. So a Markdown file, md.md, we'll see that. They're really a mix between a text file and a markup language like HTML. But they're really human readable, unlike HTML. And here's a little spoiler alert. Well, no, not yet. We'll save that one. But Markdown is simple, it's intuitive, and it's portable. That means it can be converted to all different sorts of things. It can be converted to HTML, a PDF, and other formats using different platforms and tools. Think of using Markdown like using an editor without the buttons. You add some syntax to add formatting, and Markdown is used from project to project. It can be more accessible to some of our content writers, as you don't have to take your fingers off the keyboard. You can do it with keystrokes rather than having to like use a mouse and get to the WYSIWYG. You can do a lot of those just from your keyboard alone. And the spoiler alert is it's now in core, Drupal core. Starting with Drupal 10.1.1 with CKEditor 5, we have limited available Markdown to use. But our friend Mike Anello, he has a contributed module called Markdown Easy that adds some of that functionality that the core CKEditor 5 is missing. So if you do like Markdown, check down Mike Anello's Markdown Easy. Okay. I think that's a duplicate slide. So to iterate, why Markdown? You can work on any platform or operating systems. There are dozens of really great Markdown editors for all platforms, Linux, Mac, Windows, the web. It's a great tool for non-programming types. I'm a non-programming type, but also it's good for technical writers to write without having to rely on HTML, because not all of us know how to write HTML. And these editors make it really easy to write our content and allow us to export it to PDFs or that rich text format. And Markdown gets rid of all of that distracting stuff with the distractions of a formatting toolbar when we're using an editor. You know, we save mouse clicks. It helps us focus on our writing without lifting our fingers off the keyboard. And really, it allows more control over the editorial experience. And editors prefer Markdown over just TXT files or Google Docs. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more and then we'll go right into a demo. So how do you get started with Markdown? Well, you start with an MD file and not a TXT file. The MD will indicate to your editor or to your to your editor or to your IDE that you're looking for it to be rendered in Markdown. But you also have to know the flavor of Markdown you want to write in. There's different dialects. So to wrap our head around the concept of Markdown flavors, I do like to refer to them as dialects. Me in California sounds much different than someone who lives in Louisiana. Well, our styles of Markdown are kind of like that as well. And everyone has their favorite Markdown editor. Best advice from someone who works on an editorial team: take your time and find out what works best for you. Markdown syntax is designed to be readable and unobtrusive. So the text in Markdown files can be read even if it isn't rendered. So you can use something like a plain text editor and understand what you're using. You can use something like BB Edit and still be able to read what you're trying to convey. Now here's a quick list of open source Markdown editors. I don't advocate one over the other. I do use VS Codium for different reasons. And it has a mode where I can see what I'm typing on one side and I can see what it's going to look like rendered on the other. And most of these editors have the same thing. And then I have some not so cool editors. These are what makes them not so cool is they're not open source. You know, you can't see the code. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to put something in chat. But my Zoom bar is in the way. I have a link to my presentation if anyone wants to follow along with these links. This first link is going to be a link to my presentation, and then the second link is going to be where I'm going to be giving my demo in my GitLab instance. So there's the two links so that I can focus more on this. So what are we going to go over? We're just going to go over the basics. There's lots of stuff that you can do, lots of stuff you can experiment with. Some of the non-basic stuff also means understanding which platforms you can use the language in, because you can learn like a table in GitLab and it doesn't translate to GitHub. So we're just going to do sort of the basics. Okay, so we're going to go on to the demo, and I do have it in chat. It's my GitLab Volkswagen Chick /Markdown -in -minutes. We'll hit escape. We'll go over here. So this is a repository where I play around, and it's a sandbox for this presentation. One of the reasons I like Markdown a lot is because I can create Drupal README files in it. So I have a sample README file here from the Gen admin theme. You can see that we have a header, we have bullet points, we have links, and we have code blocks. So this is interesting. You know, this is an MD file. So if we look at the code, it's still very readable. You can tell that this is the Gen admin theme. We can see where there's going to be bullet points. We can see where there's headings, and we can see where there's links. And we'll learn how to do these, but this is a good reason for Drupal technical documentation. We use Markdown. So again, there's the human readable version that's not rendered. And then here's the rendered version of it. So pretty handy. So that is the README. I have a README that I wrote, which is the same thing. And you can see I have links just for consistency. We'll look at the code. You can see I have headers, I have bullet points, and I have links. So we'll go through all of the things that make these possible. Okay, so the first thing I'll talk about is headings. So headings, I'm big on accessibility, and I want to talk about the purpose of headings. Headings are not for style. They are not to make one section of your one section look better than the other. They're not for styling. They are for semantic accessibility. When you have a heading and you have a screen reader, the screen reader reads it in order. So it's really important to pay attention to your heading structure. So here's our rendered headings. We can see we have headings and breaks. I talk about it. So let's look at the code real quick. There's two different ways you can do headings. One way to do headings is to do a hashtag with a space, and this creates a heading 1. Now, semantically, we want to always nest our headings. So the next one would be a heading 2. You only want one H1 on your page, but this isn't a test of accessibility. This is Markdown. So we do 2, and we have 2 headings. So if you want to look at a heading 1, a heading 2, a heading 3, a heading 4, the difference is the amount of hashtags you have in front. So if we go switch over and look at it, we can see we have a heading 1, a heading 2, a heading 3, a heading 4, and a heading 5. Alternately, there's another way to write headings is you can have your heading spelled out, and your heading 1 has equal signs underneath it, and your heading 2 has hyphens underneath it. So we'll look at that rendered, our heading 1 and our heading 2, and they look the same as that, but it only goes to 2 headings with that style. And then the last thing I want to show is horizontal rules on this page. So we have horizontal rules. You know, we have that at heading 2. It's 3 dashed lines. So 1, 2, 3. So if we look at that rendered, you can see that last one is 3 dashed lines, and we have a horizontal rule across the page. Okay, so the next one we'll look at is, how about inline code and code blocks? Oh no, this is inline formatting examples. Okay, so we have italics, bolds, strike throughs, and block quotes. So if we look at the code, we see we have italics here. We add 1 asterisk or underscore before or after a phrase with no space between the word and the character. And I want to say this because when we looked at headings, there is a space between the copy and the character. But for italics, bolds, and strike throughs, there's no space. So we'll look at the code, and you can see we added the 1 asterisk before and the 1 asterisk after, or the 1 hyphen before and the 1 hyphen after. Now, bold is 2 asterisks before and after, or 2 underscores before and after. And then we have a strike through with that same sort of reasoning where it's 2 tildes before and 2 tildes after. So if we look at those rendered, you can see we have the italic. They both look the same, one with the 1 asterisk before and after, and one with the 1 underscore before and after. Same thing with the bold, the 2 and the 2, and the tildes or the strike throughs are the 2 tildes. And then we have block quotes. You add a caret. I don't know if that's a greater or less than sign. I'm not, I would think you'd think I would know with math, but you can see that we added the greater than sign. And then when it's rendered, it makes it into that block quote for us. And remember, when we work on our pages and we have our CSS and styling, that block quote will look different depending on how you styled it. But in basic Markdown, it's going to appear like that. So we did headings, links list. Here's code. Code's fun. We want to do code blocks. It's very important when we do technical documentation or submit articles to editorial magazines and that sort of stuff online, that we do not take screenshots of our images and use images, because people cannot copy and paste them. So the easiest way, the more straightforward way to do for people to like copy and paste terminal commands or copy and paste, code, is to have it in a code block. So you can see here we have inline, and then we have a code block. And depending on where you are, GitHub or GitLab or in your Drupal instance, this is going to be themed a little bit different. But again, it's pretty straightforward. When we look at the code, we have the ticks, the back ticks surrounding I love Drupal for our inline code. And then for our code blocks, we have 3 ticks before a new line and then our code, and then 3 ticks on a new line after our code. So again, back ticks surrounding our code with no spaces for our inline code, and 3 back ticks above and 3 back ticks below our code block. So again, if we look at that, you can see that one's inline and this one's a code block. Okay, we'll do links next. So links are fun. There are certain rules around links that you need to pay attention for accessibility, but this is not an accessibility talk, so we won't go into those. But I do want people to know that if you do have a link that's only identified by color, you might not be passing compliance with your links for ADA and 508 and WCAG standards. You should really have 2 designated differences in your in-text links if it's not underlined. If it's underlined, fine, but if it's just color, you should really have it be bold or a different font or something like that. So URLs, it's linked text enclosed by square brackets. We can't see that right now. Followed by parentheses. So if we look at that, we can see our link text is inside brackets, and our URL is inside parentheses. So we did Drupal Camp Asheville inside the brackets and the URL outside the brackets. So look at that again. So we have Drupal Camp Asheville, and it'll take us to drupalcampasheville.com. And registration is open if you want to register for camp. Okay, if you want to add a title to your link, we'll look at it. Okay, we have Drupal Camp Asheville the same way we had before. But before we close the parentheses out, we have the title in quotations. So we've got that bracket, the parentheses, and inside the parentheses, we have the URL along with the title in parentheses or in quotations. So if we look at that again, if we scan, hover over it, we can see that title. It says Drupal Camp Asheville's homepage. And then to make a relative link within a repository, like something in my repository here, again, straightforward. You're going to use that bracket parentheses pattern, but you don't have to start with that URL. You can start with that blob. So you can see I didn't have to put, Volkswagen check Markdown in minutes and all of that. I could just start with blob main list MD. So if we go here, we can see that if we go back to lists, it's going to take us all the way to lists without having to have that big URL. But that's within your website or within your code or within your repository. That's what that is. It's a relative link within an instance. You can quickly turn a URL or email address into a link when you enclose it in brackets. So if we look at the code, you can see we enclosed with brackets and brackets. And then when we see it rendered, this will take you straight to the website, and this will take you straight to your email program that will open up and autofill it with the email address. Lists are something that are fun to do in Markdown. There are two types of lists. We have ordered lists and unordered lists. There are two different ways you can do ordered lists, and we'll look at ordered lists first. You can create an ordered list by having sequential numbers, 1 with a period and a space in your item, 2 period space with number 3, 4, 5, 6, or we're going to look at the code to see this. You can have all of them just be 1, and it will render it in order for you. So you see here, this is our code part, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 1, 1, 1. And if we look at the rendered part, it rendered it the same. So say you're doing a long task list, you get out of order, you're like, oh, forget it, I'm not going to keep track of the numbers. If you just keep doing 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 down the list, it'll render it the same. Pretty neat. Then we have unordered lists. These are our bullet points and that kind of thing. And you can see that I have 3 sets of bullet points here and they all look the same, but you can do it 3 different ways. Why can you do it 3 different ways? I don't know, but you know what? For my hands, one of the keystrokes is easier than the other one for me. So I always use an asterisk because that's where my finger reaches. So if we look at the code, you can see they all rendered the same, remember, with that bullet point, but you can use a hyphen, space, hyphen, space, an asterisk, space, asterisk, space, or you can use the plus sign, space, plus, space. So again, I know it's a lot of flipping back and forth, but just kind of reinforce the concepts. They all were programmed different, but they all look the same. Pretty neat. Now here we are combining the two. I have an ordered list, and then I have an ordered list, and then I have an unordered list within the list. So we'll look at that. And you can see I did the 1, 1, 1, 1 because I didn't want to get confused and have to keep track of numbers. And then I used, I think it's called a hanging space, where I line up the bullet point with the first word of the previous bullet point. And I used my hyphens. So you can see I have an ordered list and my unordered list in between. So one more time looking at it, kind of looks like this. So going from here, it's a good transition into a task list. I wish Jira had the ability to use this because this is spectacular, but you can see you can add task lists, you can strike things through, you can have a checkbox. So how do you do that? You add your bullets and then you add a set of brackets in between. And then when you complete a task, you put an X. And to strike out a task, say it's in a not applicable, but you still want the history of that task being there, then you can just put a tilde in. Remember how we did the tildes, the 2 tildes before and the 2 tildes after? It was a strike through. So the tilde does the strike through here. So let's look at this. You can see we have an unordered list, and then we started that task list. We have the completed task. We have that struck through task, and then we have that sub list again. Then we did an ordered list, and we kind of did the same thing. So look at that for a second. And then when we look back, you can see that we can see where our tildes were, we can see where our X's and brackets were, and we can see where we were able to do some subtasks within. Okay, I have drop downs. And in all honesty, I do not think they're accessible in Markdown, but they're kind of a neat thing. But I do want to warn people that I don't think that they're accessible with a screen reader or with a keyboard sometimes, depending on how it's rendered. But I'll show you this. So a drop down. What is the best Drupal camp in the world? So you can drop down and you can see the answers that your choices are. And I should have changed it and had Stanford Camp be one of these, but I didn't think about it ahead of time. But this is kind of a neat thing. We have a drop down, up and down. So let's look at that code. So this one's a little bit different. We talk about details. Our summary is our question, and we close out that summary. And then we have our A1 with a break, A2 with a break, A3 with a break, and then we close out our details, you know, first in, last out. Look at it again. It's kind of neat. That's a drop down. Okay. What do I want to do now? Tables or flowcharts? How about tables? So you can write a table in Markdown. How great is that? You do not have to have that WYSIWYG and do all the counting and figure out how you're going to write it in Figma. You can do it in Markdown. And you can see that there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can see that once I have these all left aligned, I have all of these right aligned. I have these center aligned, and then I have a combination. So let's look and see how I did that. So tables, you start with those pipes and you kind of define your headings. Your pipes, it doesn't matter how many spaces you have, you just want a space before and after your word. And you can see here from the pipes that there are 3 headings there. And this is where I define the layout right here. I have those same pipes and I have a colon. I have a colon on the left side of each of those pipes, and it's defining that those columns are going to be on the left-hand side. To iterate that with my right aligned tables, all of my colons are all on the right side. And then for my center aligned, my colons are on both sides. And then you can see that this one is a mix of all 3. Let's look at the table again. So you can see all of those are left aligned, and we had those pipes defining it with the colons and the hyphens. The colons were all on the left. The right aligned where the colons were all on the right, and the center aligned where the colons were on both sides. You can also do things like bold the text within your table. Sometimes you don't even have to fill in your table. So let's look at that code again. I just want to like kind of drive in that point. So we've got pipes that define our titles. And then we've got pipes underneath that define where that colon is, what side it's going to be justified on. You can mix them if you want. And then within the table itself, you can use inline markdown. So you can use strike through, you can use bold, you can use italics. And if you don't want anything in there, you just leave a space for an empty column or an empty cell. You use a space. So one more time looking at it because it's kind of neat. All to the right, all to the left. And then our titles are automatically bolded because that's how table headings are formatted. Okay, flow charts. You can make a flow chart in Markdown because I am not a designer. And every time someone says, oh, go make a flow chart, I'm like, oh, geez. Oh, you need access to my slide deck. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? Let me just open that up real quick while we're. All the things you have to remember when you're a presenter. Oh, it's not letting me. I will have to do that afterward because I'm taking valuable time away and I can't figure it out how to do copy and paste on my Linux computer. Okay. Of course not. So flowcharts are fun, but they are unique to GitLab right now. So you shouldn't be using GitHub anyway. It's not open source. So move all your stuff to GitLab because it's open source. But GitHub follows GitLab pretty regularly. So just because they're not available in GitHub today doesn't mean they're not going to be ready in a couple of weeks. So anyway, there's flowcharts here. You can see that I can flowchart all sorts of things. I can put letters, I can put words in there. I can make square corners. I can make round corners. I can put them horizontal. I can put one way. All sorts of things that you can do with flowcharts. I'm not going to go into all of them, but this is just an example of things that you can do. Again, you know, if you need a visual for some sort of editorial or for your um, for your technical documentation, um, make sure that you use alt text. Anyway, so let's look at the code. And I see one question: are the libraries in Drupal core or contrib for converting HTML to Markdown? I do not have the answer to that. I know that the Markdown Easy module that Mike Anello is working on has some libraries that support GitHub. So his is a module that has the libraries and can put them into HTML, but I don't know about the reverse part of it. But so let's look at the code. So these are flow diagrams, and it actually calls a mermaid library. I don't know why it's called mermaid, maybe because of flow. I don't know. So we start and we call, you know, we do some ticks. I don't know the science behind it. I'm just showing you an example. So we call a mermaid library. We call our graph data and where we want it to go. So we say we want A to B, A to C, C to D, and B to C. Down here, you can see that I use the word WordPress. Again, we're doing TD. So we go B to D. If you want rounded corners, you would hit LR. I'm not sure what it designates, but you can see one has square corners and the other has rounded corners. You can put words in there. You have to be real careful with some stuff. You might have to do that anti sign before it. You know, you don't have to have a straight line. But a lot of times what I'll do for visuals is when I put this in an exam as a content question, I will still put B to C, C to D, D to A, you know, and have that written out, but then have a flow chart for people who may not be able to parse the information just with the letters alone. So it kind of is another way to convey information from people that might not be able to process it with the letters. And again, you know, you can do all kinds of crazy things and you can break it. You can break it. Sometimes you can't cross lines. We've been trying to like figure out how to do this and we couldn't do that. So, but just something handy to know. And footnotes. Footnotes are cool. We use footnotes in documentation. I have a link to the footnote stuff here. You can see here is a paragraph with the one that goes to the footnote. And here's a footnote for 2. And if this was a little bit bigger document, it would take you to the footnote, and then this would take you back up to the instance that it's called. But if we look at the code, we can see that we called the footnote here. Here's our number 1. And so you define your footnotes at the bottom of your page by doing the bracket with the 1, with the colon underneath, and then you write out your footnote. And same thing with the 2. At the bottom of the page, here's your footnote. And then they get rendered like that. Let's see, did we do everything? Lists, links, headings. Let's go back and look. Tables, lists, links, inline formatting, headings and breaks, footnotes, and flowcharts. Yep. Are there any, like, this is a beginning session. So are there any beginning type images? Images are complicated, and I did not put that in there because I talk about the basics of Markdown. So images can be complicated because you want to remember, you want to have alt text. You know, it depends on whether or not you want to point it to a URL. Depends on if you want it to be clickable. You know, I was thinking that like maybe I do a second, because I could do a whole talk on images alone. That's how kind of complicated they are. So I sort of drew the line at images. But there's lots of great documentation. Let's see. Common Mark is a great source of documentation. A lot of your flavors, your dialects of Common Mark come from Common Mark, and they have a great cheat sheet. Opensource.com used to have a really great cheat sheet when Red Hat thought open source was important enough to support a website like that. But you can find a lot of resources in the documentation here. And then they have like really good like cheat sheets that kind of go through everything. And they have, these are kind of the basic ones. But here's some images. A linked image, you would put a link. No, this is just a link. I'm sorry. Oh, here's an image. So you have that BAM and an image and a URL. You can see here. Oh, it's not doing it, but usually it renders as like a link right there, like a logo on your website and stuff like that. So play around with it. It's really fun. And really, if you're submitting articles or you're doing technical documentation, Markdown is sort of the way we're moving forward. Just because it is human readable, we're wanting more people to be able to understand it. We don't want to have our editorial team, or I'm not saying this to be reductive. We don't want to have that huge learning curve for our editorial staff of our marketing team to be able to use a WYSIWYG and be able to make everything. But if it's human readable like it is in Markdown, they'll understand what's going on, what's being said without having to learn HTML and have accessible results from that. I think I'm going to fix my link right now while we're doing it. There we go. Thanks, Aaron, for pointing that out. Any questions?
What about styling? Is there any way to introduce a style to Markdown?
There is, you can do some CSS and but most of that happens on your theme layer. That's really where it should be kept if you're doing anything like that, is in your theme layer. I know that you can put a library in for when you're doing code highlighting. So you can put in what type of code highlighting you're doing. You can put it in as green or red, or maybe the font is different with Bash, but a lot of that is in your theming versus in the Markdown. Yeah. And configuring your CKEditor too, to like have uh to support some of the Markdown that you're using. KP asks, wondering about adoptions. Have you found editors like using Markdown? I have. The editors really like doing it. It's the writers that we need to adopt Markdown. It's more them thinking it's going to be a higher learning curve than it is. But I find most editors like it because, especially if it's in Drupal, you can just drop it in and not even think about it. But yeah, it's a learning curve for the editors. When I worked at opensource.com, I had a core set of correspondence, and we gave a little talk like this, a little writer's workshop, and all of them were like, oh, okay, we shouldn't be using Google Docs anyway because we're at opensource.com. And they switched to the Markdown for us.